Have you ever wondered what it truly means to hear the voice of God? Not through a preacher, not through a book, but directly, intimately, in a way that changes everything you thought you knew about faith? What you're about to hear isn't just another testimony. It's a journey into the depths of spiritual hunger, where a woman pushed past the noise of everyday life and encountered something so profound, it defied explanation. This is the story of a divine conversation that happened during a 40-day fast, a conversation that revealed secrets about prayer, purpose, and the very nature of God's love for us. Stay with me, because what she discovered during those days of sacrifice might be exactly what your soul has been searching for. Sarah wasn't religious in the traditional sense. She attended church occasionally, said prayers before meals, and considered herself a believer. But something was missing, a void that no amount of Sunday services or religious activities could fill. At 32 years old, married with 2 children, she had everything the world told her would bring happiness. Yet late at night, when the house was quiet and the distractions faded, she felt an aching emptiness that terrified her. It was during one of these sleepless nights that she heard about fasting, not as a diet trend, but as a spiritual practice. The idea seized her heart with an intensity she couldn't explain. Without fully understanding why, Sarah made a decision that would transform her life. She would fast for 40 days, seeking God with everything she had. Her family thought she was extreme. Her friends questioned her sanity. But Sarah knew somehow that this was her path to answers. The initial days were brutal. Sarah's body screamed for food, her mind flooded with doubts, and the silence felt oppressive rather than peaceful. She had imagined fasting would bring immediate clarity, but instead it brought chaos. Every addiction, every distraction, every coping mechanism she had used to avoid facing herself came crashing down. There were moments she wanted to quit, to declare the whole thing a mistake, but on the 7th day, something shifted. The hunger pangs began to fade into the background, and in their place, a strange awareness emerged. It was as if removing physical nourishment had cleared space for something else, something she had never experienced before. The silence wasn't empty anymore. It was full of a presence she couldn't see but could undeniably feel. Sarah began to realize that God had been speaking all along. She had just been too full of food, of noise, of busyness to hear him. People often expect God's voice to sound like thunder, dramatic and unmistakable. But Sarah discovered that divine communication is far more subtle and infinitely more intimate. It began as impressions, gentle thoughts that felt foreign yet familiar, like memories of conversations she'd never had. During her morning prayer on day 12, as tears streamed down her face, she felt words form in her spirit. "I have always been here, my child. You were just looking in the wrong direction." It wasn't an audible voice, but it was undeniably real, carrying a weight and authority that her own thoughts never possessed. Over the following days, these divine whispers became more frequent. God spoke to her through scripture verses that seemed to leap off the page with personal relevance. He spoke through nature, the sunrise that felt like a love letter, the birds whose songs carried messages of hope. He spoke in dreams so vivid they felt more real than waking life. Sarah kept a journal, frantically recording every word, every impression, terrified she might forget even a single syllable of what heaven was revealing. On day 19, God spoke to Sarah about something she had struggled with her entire life: her identity. She had always defined herself through roles: daughter, wife, mother, employee. She had measured her worth through achievements and others' approval. But during this fast, God began to dismantle every false foundation. "You are not what you do," the voice whispered. "You are not what others say about you. You are not even what you think about yourself. You are who I say you are, my beloved, my treasure, my masterpiece." Sarah wept for hours as layers of shame, insecurity, and fear were peeled away. God showed her specific moments from her childhood where lies had taken root, times she had believed she wasn't enough, wasn't worthy, wasn't loved, and one by one, he replaced those lies with truth. The transformation wasn't instant, but something fundamental shifted in her soul. For the first time in her life, Sarah understood that her value wasn't something she had to earn or prove. It simply was, because God said so. This revelation alone, she would later say, made the entire fast worth every moment of discomfort. But God's communication wasn't all comfort and affirmation. As the fast progressed into its fourth week, the conversations became more challenging. God began to show Sarah areas of her life that needed change, patterns of behavior, toxic relationships, hidden resentments she had justified and rationalized. He spoke to her about forgiveness, and it wasn't theoretical. God brought specific names to her mind, people she needed to forgive, including herself. He showed her how unforgiveness was like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. He revealed how her unwillingness to let go was actually a form of pride, a way of playing God by determining who deserved grace. These truths cut deep. Sarah argued with God, made excuses, presented her case for why certain people didn't deserve forgiveness. But his response was always the same. Neither did you, yet I forgave you everything. The weight of that statement broke something in her, the hard shell of self-righteousness she hadn't even known she was carrying. God wasn't interested in making her comfortable. He was interested in making her free. Around day 28, exhausted and emotionally raw, Sarah experienced what she could only describe as a vision. While praying, her physical surroundings seemed to fade, and she saw herself standing at a crossroads. One path was familiar, safe, leading back to the comfortable life she had known. The other path was uncertain, winding through difficult terrain, but it glowed with an otherworldly light. God spoke. I have called you to walk the harder road, not because I want you to suffer, but because that's where your true life is waiting. Everything you've experienced, every pain and disappointment, was preparation for what I'm about to do through you. Sarah saw flashes of a future she had never imagined, speaking to crowds, writing, counseling others who were lost in the same emptiness she had escaped. It terrified her. She felt utterly inadequate for such a calling. But God reminded her that He doesn't call the qualified. He qualifies the called. This vision became her anchor for the remainder of the fast and for the difficult transitions that would follow. She finally understood that her life wasn't random, that even her darkest moments had purpose in God's grand design. What Sarah hadn't anticipated was the spiritual warfare that would accompany her breakthrough. As God's voice became clearer, opposing voices grew louder. Doubts assaulted her mind with unprecedented force. This is all in your imagination, they whispered. You're being manipulated. You're becoming a fanatic. Everyone thinks you're crazy. Physical symptoms intensified, headaches, weakness, moments of dizziness that made her question if she was damaging her health. Her relationships strained as people around her couldn't understand the changes they were witnessing. But God had warned her this would happen. The enemy doesn't attack random people, He had told her. He attacks those who are dangerous to His kingdom. Your willingness to seek me, to sacrifice comfort for connection, has made you a threat. Sarah learned to recognize the difference between God's voice and the voice of the enemy. God's voice, even when correcting, always led to peace and hope. The enemy's voice led to confusion, fear, and isolation. This discernment became one of the most valuable gifts of her fast, a spiritual sensitivity that would serve her for the rest of her life. While Sarah's fast was spiritual in nature, the physical changes were undeniable. Her body, after the initial shock, began to function differently. She experienced a clarity of mind she had never known, as if a fog had lifted from her thinking. Colors seemed more vibrant, sounds more distinct. She needed less sleep, yet felt more rested. Medical professionals would later attribute some of this to the physiological effects of extended fasting, the cellular autophagy, the metabolic reset, the detoxification. But Sarah knew it was more than biology. Her body was reflecting what was happening in her spirit. She was being renewed from the inside out. Interestingly, God spoke to her about the connection between physical and spiritual health. He showed her how she had used food as comfort, as a distraction, as a reward, essentially making it a small god in her life. The fast wasn't just about abstaining from food, it was about breaking the power of anything that had become more important than God Himself. This understanding would forever change her relationship with eating, with self-care, and with the stewardship of her physical body. The final day of Sarah's fast arrived with a mixture of relief and sadness. She had endured. She had encountered God in ways she never imagined possible, but she was also grieving the end of this sacred season. On that 40th morning, weak but radiant, Sarah knelt for her final prayer of the fast. What happened next, she struggles to put into words even now. She felt an overwhelming presence, as if the room filled with tangible glory. And God spoke with crystal clarity. "Daughter, you sought my face and you found it. You sacrificed comfort to know me, and I have revealed myself to you. But understand this. The fast is ending, but the relationship we've built does not. I am not confined to these 40 days. Take what you've learned here into every moment of your life. Teach others that I am not distant, that I long for intimacy with my children, that I speak to those who are willing to be silent long enough to hear." Sarah felt a commissioning, a mantle being placed on her shoulders. She wasn't just returning to normal life with nice memories of a spiritual experience. She was returning as an ambassador, carrying a message that the world desperately needed. God still speaks, and He's waiting for us to listen. Sarah's story isn't unique because she's special. It's powerful because it reveals a truth available to all of us. God isn't silent. He's not distant. He's not reserved for the super spiritual or the religiously elite. He's waiting, longing even, to communicate with anyone willing to create space to hear Him. Fasting was Sarah's method, but it's not the only way. The real key is hunger, a desperation for something more than this world offers, a willingness to sacrifice comfort for connection, to choose presence over presence. What would happen if you created that space in your own life? What might God reveal to you about your identity, your purpose, the lies you've believed? Sarah's 40-day journey became the foundation for a completely transformed life. She now helps others discover what she found. That intimate relationship with God isn't a fairy tale or religious rhetoric. It's the most real thing in existence, available to anyone who genuinely seeks it. So here's my question for you. What are you willing to sacrifice to hear God's voice in your own life? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one and would love to hear your story. And if this video resonated with you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who needs to hear that God is closer than they think. Subscribe and hit that notification bell, because we're on this journey together, exploring the depths of faith, the reality of God, and the transformation that happens when heaven and earth collide. Thank you for watching, and remember, God is speaking. The only question is, are you listening?